Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Tottenham Hotspur 1, Aston Villa 2. Aston Villa are in the top 4. Wow.
Let's go. Let's go. Oh my God. Oh my God. We've had a lot of wins in the past 6 months, year, whatever you want to call it. A lot of wins, a lot of 3 points, a lot of big wins on the road particularly. But there's just something about this one that just feels extra good. I don't know what it is. Like the positivity, the endorphins, the energy right now in my veins is just, otherworldly, man. I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know if it's because we didn't play great in the first half. I don't know if it's because Heung-min Son scored a hat trick of offside goals. So it kind of just feel like I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it feels absolutely great.
It's the position we're left in the table, mate. We're in the top 4. And upcoming games against Man City and Arsenal, both at home. I'm not saying we're title contenders at all, but if you win them, where does that leave Villa in the league? Oh my goodness. It's absolutely massive, mate. It's absolutely massive. We need to talk about the first half, get that out of the way, because that was a bit more difficult. Opening sort of 5-10 minutes, I felt like the game went exactly as we expected it to. Exactly how we spoke about it a couple of days ago, mate, for those people who listen on Apple and Spotify. It was end-to-end. It was all action. There were, brilliant opportunities for Spurs. Equally, a brilliant opportunity for Powell, in which he should have scored, but thankfully he atones later on and gets us back into the game. It went exactly how I thought it would, but then it just we started to fade a little bit, and I think we really struggled with the intensity of Spurs press, didn't we? They were so quick, they were so on it, and you have to give them that credit, especially with all of the injuries that they had. I can't help but feel like a turning point for this game. I know a lot of people, and rightfully so, will criticise Cash's performance. It definitely wasn't one of his best. However, we have to thank him for doing a number on Rodrigo Bentancur, mate, because as soon as he comes off the pitch, the game completely almost flips on its head in the second half, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, mate. This game was played at such a level of intensity that was just so difficult to kind of compete with. And I texted you during the game and I was like, it just feels like if you took any 5-minute snippet from that game and showed it to me completely out of context and were like, oh yeah, this is the last 5 minutes of stoppage time in a 3-3 thriller, I'd have been like, oh yeah, totally. Look at it, it's end to end, it's totally transitional, the challenges are flying in, players are riding tackles, it's end to end, it's complete chaos. And that's just kind of how it was. And when you've got you have to be so technical to kind of thrive in those environments, which is exactly what Bentancur is of it. If you took one word out of the dictionary to sum up Bentancur, it's technical. He's so gifted, particularly in tight spaces, very press resistant. And I felt that that's definitely something we got better at in the second half, is being a bit snappier, kind of embracing the chaos of the game. Which I felt that we were completely run over in the first half, and we couldn't get our foot on the ball in the way that Spurs could. And so, yeah, I do feel that him coming off was a massive thing that swung the game. Mate, you're absolutely right.
I think if you look at the sort of average positions of this game, I think the one place where we sort of got caught out is with Kulusevski and with Bryan Hill. I think they both probably played on the opposite side that we would have expected. And I think there was a sort of triangle of Gil, Lo Celso and Udogie that really managed to overwhelm Cash, Konsa, and I guess you could sort of throw Boubacar into that as well. I actually, I wanted Cash to start further up. I thought that would make us more solid. I wanted Ezri in that right back spot. It didn't necessarily work out, but thankfully it was a halftime masterclass from Unai Emery, wasn't it, mate? To make that switch. And it's amazing. I mean, I think Tielemans probably feels hard done by not starting this game, if we're being completely honest. And Leon Bailey comes on again, with his first shot as well to sort of hit the post as he did. It almost goes in off the back of Vicario. Straight away, I thought that was brilliant. The response was great. I'm getting ahead of ourselves here. We need to talk about the offside goal. I cannot believe there are 2 different angles where Watkins is both on and offside.
Yes.
And of course, I'm coming at this with current and blue tinted spectacles. The angle where he looks offside looked way more balanced, like the field of play, than the one where he was offside, which is quite clearly at an angle, and you can't necessarily tell if he is or isn't offside. And if he is, it's literally by a fraction. I can't believe that. I mean, there was even talk about the VAR not working within the first 5 minutes of the game as well, which is obviously with the whole Nyland thing. Like, the last thing we want to be labelled with, is it, mate? You know, that constantly getting these VAR decisions or whatever that go in our favour. People, Spurs fans, I'm sure will debate that penalty in the comments. That was complete nonsense. I'm not even going to entertain that. But even though the goal was disallowed, whether it was for right or for wrong, I'm so glad that we were able to come back into this game as quickly as we did with that disallowed goal, because we spoke about it. You know, I think especially after the Forest game, we said, you go 1-0 down so early, mate, no matter if it's Nottingham Forest or if it's Bayern Munich, Aston Villa aren't coming back. So the fact that we were able to get ourselves back into this game, okay, the goal didn't stand, but then we managed to get our equaliser before half-time through Pau Torres, that was really big for me. That felt like a turning point. The fact that we scored pretty much instantly after we conceded and went to Spurs, listen, we may not be playing well, but we're going to still cause you some problems. That's the sign of a great team. That's the sign of a great coach.
Oh, God. Poetry, mate. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really, that point about the offside angles is really, really interesting. I hadn't considered it like that. You know me. I know you. I'm super boring. Super boring when it comes to officials. Don't like the criticism. I don't really get into the whole VAR thing. It's not my bag. I'm inclined to generally say, like, in those situations, like, if it's very difficult, go with the underfield decision, which was offside. I haven't got massive beef with the decision. As you rightly say, some angles where it looked on, some angles where it looked off. I was like, okay, there's a great goal for what it's worth. Brilliant. And you know what it reminded me of? The kind of end to the first half. Liverpool away at the end of last season.
Yep.
Where we had the goal ruled out for offside, and then we literally followed it up a few minutes later with JJ, wasn't it? JJ scores at the far post. And that kind of, you almost feel that when you're in these big games, that when you see an offside goal, it's particularly hurts because you're like, maybe that was it. You know, like, you don't know how many chances, particularly with how we were playing in the first half, you don't know how many chances you're going to get against these top sides. And so to follow it up so quickly with that, I know it's not necessarily a free-flowing move and everything like that, and maybe this is a nice opportunity to talk about the opening goal, but to just bounce back from that so quickly and, like, brush it off and go, okay, if that's not it, we're going to get them again. And to just go, oh, God, the ball from Dougie, man. I could talk about it all day. The ball from Dougie is one thing, and the header from Pau is another thing. And maybe we do 2 podcasts this week on each of those 2 things, because I could talk about them each for like half an hour. They're just amazing.
If it was Kevin De Bruyne, mate, we're talking about greatest free kick of all time, greatest assist. Douglas Luiz does not get the credit that he deserves. And as you say, mate, we could go on for hours and hours about that. I'm really glad, especially as I kind of touched on, that Pau managed to right the wrong. He really should have scored that first goal. And, you know, we've kind of sat on here a couple of times, really, you know, especially, you know, in the transfer rumour mills and when we signed him and all this kind of stuff. Heading isn't really his bag, but when you're 6'3", when you're a centre half, I don't care where you're from, I'm sorry, heading, it kind of comes with the territory. And he scored a few goals now for us. Obviously comes up clutch at Molineux as well with a bit of a different finish. It's great that he's contributing like that. I thought he had a really good game, really good range of passing. I thought, you know, half-time came, the goal, half-time, absolutely perfect time. Whatever Unai said at half-time, he clearly got his message across. And as we kind of touched on earlier with the changes that we made, Bailey lighting it up pretty much straight away as soon as coming on, I felt like, right, okay, we're really going to give this a bit better of a go. And we didn't really, I mean, you know, you look at the possession stats, Spurs completely dominate that, 64%-ish. And they passed the ball like twice the amount of us as well. I think we made 370 odd passes. They made about 650, which again is to be expected. But I sort of look at how that second half went, and again, the fact that we got that goal, in the back of their minds, they're thinking, right, okay, they can really create something. I'm looking at the defence and the midfield, to be fair, in fairness as well, from Spurs, and I'm seriously questioning if we sort of left North London with nothing, especially when you're playing Ben Davies and Emerson Royale as your two centre halves. The first goal was clear to see that Ollie was clearly a problem for them. When you're playing guys like that out of position, the disallowed goal, sorry, not the first goal. We were clearly going to create chances and get some luck here. And I think if this game went on for another 20, 30 minutes, I think we probably would have got another goal as well, mate. We definitely grew into the game. And when you listen to the halftime analysis from Roy Keane and from everyone, and they're talking about Villa not deserving their goal and it being all Spurs, that's complete and utter nonsense. I even felt like some of the stuff that I was sort of reading on Twitter, by no means were Villa in control of the game, and by no means did we potentially look like winning the game from that first half of football. But the game plan suited us. I can't remember who it was now. Somebody who listened to the podcast. I replied to one of their tweets and I said, I actually feel like the game plan is almost perfectly happening. We'll get Tielemans and Bailey on, and then we'll attack them with tired legs. And I mean, I think we conceded the goal about 10 minutes after I tweeted that. But despite that, the game actually went exactly as I'd predicted. And that's not like a gloat or anything like that. That's just what we see with Unai Emery teams, mate, isn't it? We kind of know the patterns of play. We know the substitutions. We know how things are going to go. Spurs couldn't keep attacking us at the intensity that they did. And, when we caught them out offside 5 times, again, I think that puts us up to like 58 offsides or something ridiculous like that throughout the whole season. Hat-trick of offsides, as you said, offside goals, as you said, from Son, mate, in this game. Yeah, you can say we rode our luck, but that's football. That's football. So for Roy Keane to say we didn't deserve it and this and that, I find that completely ludicrous, mate, because that second half especially, with fantastic value for it. Second half, mate, we had 10 shots, okay, which is double the amount of shots that we managed in the first half. Spurs only managed 7 in the first half, and to be fair to them, they actually got 11 in the second half as well. I think when they obviously had to chase the game, they were obviously attacking it with a little bit more intention. But again, like, I don't want to sit here and talk about offside goals and be like, on another day we could have lost, because like at the end of the day, you can only beat what's in front of you. And I know we've sort of waxed lyrical about the injuries and the suspensions and everything that Spurs had in the preview and almost build this up to be like a game that Villa had to win. Mm-hmm. Spurs played really well. Spurs played better than I expected, mate. And again, I know they've had all them chances. Kudus obviously hits the woodwork early on, 3 offside goals, all that rubbish. They didn't score. They didn't put the ball in the back of the net. So, like, we're not going to sit here and rue missed chances for them. I feel like the game plan went perfectly, almost exactly as we called it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, mate. You're absolutely right. Especially like going into halftime at that position. Yes, you say that maybe we would have got there more comfortably, but for every Kulusevski chance that hit the post, there's a Ollie Watkins goal ruled out for offside in that first half, and so it kind of evened out. I think it was. You can't really, you're absolutely right. I don't think you can look at it this way, to be honest with you, because I think we've gotten to this place. It was about coming to this point in the season. We've always looked at this Spurs game, and maybe we looked at it slightly differently kind of a few games ago because they didn't have all these injuries. They hadn't lost 2 games in a row and everything like that. But this Spurs game was always the barometer of how good our season would be. Both you and I and other Villa fans had kind of referenced it as, basically after the international break, following the Wolves draw, we kind of had this point where it was like, right, we've got West Ham, Luton, Forest and Fulham in the league, and then 2 games with Alkmaar in the Conference League dotted in around that. If we can get through that period well, which we did, barring the defeat at Forest, then this Spurs game was always on the horizon. This was the game where it's like, right, I've got, everyone has. It's hard not to love what this Spurs team are doing. It's hard not to love the kind of culture that Ange has implemented and the way that they play football. I admire, and I think of any team in the league, we should admire how Spurs play, because in a lot of ways it's very similar to how we play. The completely, you don't compromise your style no matter who, no matter the opponent. We have our philosophy. We play the same way. That's definitely something those 2 managers share in their playbooks. And so I think on both sides, mutual admiration. And, Spurs will feel that if they had all of those players that we mentioned pre-match at their disposal, then maybe the game would have gone a different way. Maybe we're still due that real test. And maybe that will come in those kind of games against Man City and Arsenal, mate. But You're absolutely right in that we have still had to overcome adversity, and it's still a very difficult way to play. I mean, they were down to 9 men the other week against Chelsea, and Chelsea still. I know the scoreline is one thing, but that was by no means an easy game for Chelsea. So this Spurs team, because they don't relinquish their style of play, because they're so set in their philosophy and the way that Big Ange has set them up, they're never going to be an easy game. The personnel are so interchangeable because everybody knows their roles. Everybody knows how to play. These are two really good coaches. And again, that's something that Unai and Big Ange share, is that no matter who comes into the system, the personnel is usually interchangeable. The team plays the same way, and more often than not is just as effective either way. And so, yeah, like if Madders is out there and they've got Romero and Van der Ven and everything like that, it would be a really interesting game. But they didn't on the day. And that definitely has kind of helped us out. But Spurs still put up a real test today, and credit to them, because that's a makeshift back line. I mean, playing Royale and Davies at kind of centre back, and it is testament, I think, to the way that they're set up, that they gave us such a good test. But you kind of felt that when we did go into half-time 1-1, once we had that foothold in the game, we always had the stronger bench because of those injuries. You looked at the guys that we could come on, and I dare say that Ange would like to have made a few more changes than he did, but probably didn't have the tools at his disposal outside of the substitutes he made in the game. I mean, Alejo Valise obviously came on for them, and that was one of 3 subs that they made. Højbjerg and Skip also came on, didn't they? But outside of that, it's Dyer, Forster, Brandon Austin, Jamie Donnelly, and Alfie Dorrington make up their subs bench. And so you always knew that once Villa got to, I know we went in level at half time, but if we could get in level at 60 minutes, 65, 70 minutes, once the fresh legs came into play, we would always have the advantage. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's around that period, just after the hour mark, that Ollie puts us ahead.
No, absolutely, mate. And that's the thing. It's a fantastic ball from Tielemans as well. Again, as I mentioned earlier, probably feels like he should have started after recent performances. Looked like he played really well in the international break as well. He was not someone who he actually touched on all that much, but he was getting a lot of love from the Belgian fans during the break. And it's a great goal from Ollie. It is a great goal from Ollie. He'll be glad. I think Sky said that that's 2 away goals in his last 11 away games, which is like, for him, obviously, it kind of, I've said multiple times, there's goals in everywhere in this team, but if Ollie Watkins isn't scoring, the likelihood is Villa aren't going to win. So very glad that he sort of got that monkey off his back, managed to get on the score sheet. Boy, did my fantasy team need it, mate. I've had an absolute stinker this week. But man of the match, mate, it has to be undoubtedly Emi Martinez. He keeps us in this game and more. I think the double save, which came not too long after our goal that put us ahead, the Watkins goal, that's just unbelievable. There were so many instances. Brennan Johnson, real nightmare for us to deal with within that 18-yard box. I know he was offside for 2 of the goals, I think, that Son scored that were offside. But he was a real handful in that scenario as well. Emi's just brilliant, man. And, the storyline almost writes itself, doesn't it? Former Arsenal goalkeeper, man of the match at White Hart Lane. He couldn't ask for a better performance. I'm sure he'd like to keep a clean sheet. And that's the thing, man. Like looking at how we've played and the sort of the results on the road that haven't been the best. I think, the graphic before the game suggested that it was, we're averaging this season a point away on the road, which isn't great. But again, the fact that we are where we are in the table just goes to show you how strong our home form is. We're conceding goals away from home. We're not keeping clean sheets. And is that something that needs to be addressed? Possibly. But am I sort of more confident in the fact that we are now seemingly a free scoring team? Absolutely. Like, I think before Unai Emery comes in, under Steven Gerrard, even under Dean Smith, I don't know if I would have backed us to come away to Tottenham, who have been as good as they have all season, putting aside the 2 losses coming into this game that they've obviously suffered. I don't think I'd have backed us to score 2 goals. So the fact that we've done that is just absolutely amazing, mate.
Yeah, you kind of texted me mid-game. Like, I think it was at the end of the game, wasn't it? You were like, this is just Barclays football. And I don't know whether it's just seeing a Torres on the score sheet in the Premier League once again, but there is just something like the energy that this game was played with. I love it, man. I just love it. You have to cherish these days. You have to cherish these days as a Villa fan because they really have not come around a lot. Not in our lifetime anyway. You kind of look at where we're at today. So we are, fourth in the table. Obviously, this is the first time we've been in the top 4 positions after at least 13 games of a season. The first time since December the 27th, 2009. So you're looking well over kind of just under 15 years since that's been the case. Just remarkable, really, the run that we've been on and the fact that we go into these games with such confidence. We have to kind of refocus and reset because we've got a difficult game midweek in the Conference League, which is where we have come a little unstuck at times. Things haven't been as easy as we'd like. I dare say the boys, I'd like to give them a rest, to be honest with you. So I think we have to, again, maybe up for a little bit of rotation there and kind of see how we go. But there'll be a whole kind of preview on that game. But I just can't get enough of watching this side. I'm so happy with kind of how everything is. I'm really happy for the boys that have really stuck with the process. And you kind of mentioned Emmy there, mate. And just to kind of, for his journey and the last few years that he's been on in football, I dare say there are like many crazier stories in world football, to be honest with you, like going right back to, as you say, being Arsenal's second choice goalkeeper, the whole World Cup thing, and then just the ride that he's been on with Villa. And seeing him consistently put in performances like this. We're playing in Europe midweek. We're beating the big guns on the weekend. We're into the Champions League places. And look, I think getting into them is one thing. Keeping Villa there is entirely another, considering the sides that are beneath us. But to be at this point, we've got another winnable game next weekend. And, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and start looking a week in advance already. But it's a very, very enjoyable time to be a Villa fan right now, mate. Dare say the most enjoyable in decades. And Unai Emery and what he's done with this team, it just never grows old. It just never grows old. You come away from results like today and it just feels so special. And I'm just so grateful that we have these guys on the journey with us, that we have this manager at the helm, and that you and I get to talk about it so regularly, pal.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I think it's fair to say you can tell that Unai Emery went to watch the Milwaukee Bucks during the break, couldn't we, mate? Because, boy, that felt like an NBA game. The pace was just frantic.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. Guys, before we round off, just a little bit of housekeeping. I saw a comment and it was basically, obviously we've mentioned it a few times. We kind of tweaked slightly how we approach things on the channel. And I just wanted to communicate this just to make it like abundantly clear about what we do and why we're doing it and why things have changed. There was 2 videos posted, shorter, cut down versions from the main preview podcast that we do. That's how we're doing previews now, because unfortunately for the longest time, even when the channel was seemingly in good health, previews have always been the worst performing content on this channel. And obviously Dan and I want to do them. We want to talk about the game. We really enjoy doing them, but us sort of putting them out on YouTube for them to die after spending all the time that we do, researching, editing, uploading, all that kind of stuff that you guys don't see, it just wasn't very cost effective or time effective. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but the post-match stuff will always go on the channel in full, as you are seeing it right now, everybody. This is our bread and butter, this and transfer rumor mills, which again, transfer videos will always go on YouTube in full as well. The previews will go on Spotify and Apple in full as well. And that's also in a bid to try and get more people listening on the audio platforms, because there's not too many of you. So again, we're trying to maximize everything. The channel's been in very poor health, and it's no secret that YouTube prioritizes shorter content. So we're looking for 8 to 10 minute clips rather than a 30 to 40 minute podcast that we stick on, because that's not going to get recommended to you guys. And I think, just to be completely honest, Dan and I would do this for no money. We have done this for no money for so long. The money that we make off the channel is so insignificant. It barely covers our monthly Adobe fees. So we're doing this to try and help us break even. There's a period of time last year where we went 4 months without making any money due to getting fucked by YouTube, by posting, user-generated content from the World Cup, literally just clips of them and Martinez celebrating. we had ads completely removed. So again, you know, we run it at a loss, and all we're trying to do is make sure that the time and effort and the money that we put back into this channel, we're at least getting that back, because you know, like things, you know, to be completely candid, you know, we're in a cost of living crisis. I don't need to sit here and come and lecture you guys about money and everything like that. I'm sure there are people who are way worse off than Dan and I are, but obviously we can't necessarily afford to spend 50 to 60 quid a month on editing software to then not make any money because nobody's watching the content that we're making. In an ideal world, every Villa fan ever listens to our podcast and it's great, and we don't even have to worry about money. But unfortunately, even though this is a labour of love, there has to be a middle ground where Dan and I can do what we're doing and not be in the red. And again, you know, this not like, I don't need to tell you guys how much we make, but I mean, I guess you can figure it out. The fact I've just said it's about 60 quid a month by the time we split it between the two of us, and that just about covers the editing software subscription. Never mind the hours put in researching, editing, uploading, thumbnails, all that jazz. So for you guys that have embraced the change, Dan and I really appreciate that. Yeah, long form content, as I said, it's not going off Apple and Spotify. All the previews are there. We're just trying to maximize SEO, do all of this stuff, because that means that we can like do this more often for you guys, and there'll be more content. And it's not a case of you guys feeling like you're getting cheaped out of content and this and that. And the one thing I will say is, you know, the comment, I think that the reason that the comment that I'm sort of referencing here was brought up was because the YouTube videos went up before the podcast, and that just isn't going to be the case. That was a complete mistake on my end, technical difficulties. I uploaded that podcast like 3 times to try and get it on Spotify and Apple, and it just wasn't having it. It only went up yesterday on a Saturday. So that is a genuine mistake on our end, technical difficulties. But I just thought, to those of you guys, I mean, to be honest, if you've made it this far anyway, I don't need to tell you guys, we don't need to explain ourselves to you guys. You know, you guys are the life and soul of the channel, especially if you've listened this far. So shout out to you guys that have. You know, we've put on some new subscribers recently. It feels like the channel is doing better. The last 2 videos did a bit shit, but in general, like Dan and I feel the experiment that we've done recently has worked. So for now, at least, we are going to stick to doing what we're doing. And we just hope you guys can understand that.
Real time, and absolutely. For everyone that's kind of watching at the moment, I really appreciate it. And I think the kind of best thing to do, we have a really good core community, like particularly you guys that are listening now have been there for the longest time. It's always the same faces and stuff like that in the comments. So you know who you are if you've been listening more than not. Like, we interact with you, we know who you are. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. Like, particularly the running for Christmas, there's going to be so much content. And then in January, you know how much Dan and I love the transfer window and getting to talk about all the new exciting transfers that we make. So send it to your friends, send it to your family, send it to your neighbour, send it to your barber. Anyone that you know that supports Villa, just send it to them, because more likely than not, we love this club. They'll love this podcast, and we'll love getting to talk to new people and providing this content to as many people as we can. That's what it's all about, mate. As I said, you and I love recording this, but we love recording it so you guys, you know, Dan and I, we'd quite happily sit in a pub over a pint and talk about this like we do on the podcast, but it's you guys that makes all of this worthwhile. So
Absolutely.
the more the merrier.
Nail on the head. Much love to you guys for listening. That was a good win, so let's just enjoy it. You know, nothing beats a win on a Sunday. End the week in a proper good way. And yeah, I'm sure I forgot we had a game on Thursday, so we'll be back on Apple and Spotify in full for the preview, and with shorter versions of the preview on the channel, as you guys know. Dan and I would really appreciate it. I mean, I completely get, and I get it. I hate short form content. I hate that that's what we are now, but we have to adapt to survive. I think there's only like one Villa podcast that's older than ours, and I think that's My Old Man Said. And we still seem to be doing the worst out of all of them, despite us doing this, not this, but this industry for a living. And I find that mad, but that's just the world that we're in, mate. We love doing it. We're not going to stop doing it. And yeah, we just hope that you guys appreciate the change from our point of view. I know it's not ideal from a consumption point of view, but I mean, the way I see it, you guys are getting way more content. Like, that's how I see it. So
what's not to love?
And you can pick and choose. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up the Villa.